So October 2019, and it's the first video that I've actually sat down to do since I've had my baby in August. I've been kind of doing like little vlogs and things here and there, but it's been busy. But I did want to do a top 10 Halloween favorite, top 10 favorite Halloween movies to watch during the season. And truth be told, I watch these all year round. They're not really Halloween movies, but I watch them extra hard during the month of October, and there's maybe like one or two that I watch more often in October than the rest of the year, but honestly these are favorites and I love them all year round. I've been watching these since I was a kid and they're just always on repeat. Basically, they just make me so happy. We'll start at number 10, and these, I don't think a lot of people have probably heard of these, but, and I might refer to a series or a franchise versus just one movie in the franchise, so I'm kind of cheating, but that's okay. Number 10 is House. This was a film series, but particularly House 1 and 4. I think it's 4, not 5. I'm not good with the Roman numerals. They don't make any sense. So I watched these when I was a kid. They're scary as a kid and campy and just really, really good examples of camp and B horror movies. So they came out in the 80s. Actually, I think that House 1 came out in like mid to late 80s. House 4 came out like early 90s, maybe 92-ish. And I want to do videos on each of these movies individually because I know so much about them and I've grown up with them and they're just like so close to my heart that I can't possibly like put all the reasons why I like them in this video because I'm talking about so many. But these two movies kind of don't make sense in relation to each other because it's the same leading guy in them, but he's got like different families in each one, and the house looks the same, but in House 4 it's like dilapidated, it's like out in the desert and there's nothing around it, whereas in the first House movie, it's like in a regular neighborhood and it's like blue and like well maintained and historic and everything. So they don't make sense, and like the character's name is the same and everything. I don't know, I don't really get why they did that. I need to research kind of like more into these movies. It could be that they just kind of like reimagined it and was just like, scrap the first one, let's just reinvent it, let's just take it into a new direction and just do something totally different with it. Like, previous movies be damned, I guess. But in House 1, when I was a kid, the scene that I remember the most was when Roger thinks it's his wife turned into like the house turned her into like a monster, made him think it was his wife, and she's this like crazy huge purple monster basically with this crazy shrill voice, and when he finally like kills her, it's my favorite part because it's like, I'm trying to think what the song is called. When I do a video on the film series, I need to like include all that with my notes and everything. This is just kind of a brief overview with some few thoughts of why I love them and why they're kind of like where they are on the list in relation to each other. But this music comes on and he's just like getting his groove back, basically like, all right, I'm gonna take back control of the situation that's making me insane. And then the fourth one, there's this scene with pizza and the pizza man, and there's a whole song and dance to it, but it's basically like the house makes this pizza come alive and like it tortures the mom. It's so good, it's so fucking good. And then like one of the villains is like this toxic waste dude who is like full of toxic waste and they like pump it out of him. It's so gross, it's so fucking disgusting, but it's so good. Because I mean, as a kid, there are some genuinely scary parts, but it's, as an adult, I can appreciate like just well done camp B movie, like so good, and it's nostalgic. So that was number 10. I'm doing 10. Number 9 Number 9 is probably the only Halloween movie that is not a horror movie. So I was born in 86, but I grew up during the 90s. Hocus Pocus is everybody's favorite Christmas movie, Halloween movie in my generation. It's just so good. Like, I remember watching it when I was a kid, and it's supposed to be in Salem, Massachusetts, I guess. And so on the East Coast in New England, I think Massachusetts is in New England, right? They're famous for their fall foliage. So it, like, when in one of the beginning scenes of the movie, you obviously have like the red and gold trees. It's just like so idyllic. And I love how Max, his room kind of has like stairs leading up to the lighthouse detail of the house, and I was just like, oh my god, I want his room. There were so many movies and shows that I watched when I was a kid that I was like, oh my god, I want that kid's room. I had to watch it every single year, and I'm really excited to share it with my daughter when she's old enough. She's just 2 months old now. So I was watching it again last night, and I'll watch it multiple times during the Halloween season, and then sometimes I'll watch it throughout the year, but that's not one that I watch. I typically do watch it during like the Halloween season most often. But I was realizing that Sarah Jessica Parker's witch, what was her name? I can't think of it right now. Anyway, her character, I feel like is like really pedo-ish, and I'm just like, does nobody address the fact that she's like a huge pedophile in this? But yeah, so that's number 9. And then number 8 is the original Halloween movie. It's so funny that in all these movies from here on out, I have in parentheses original. They remake things to death, and it's never ever as good as the original. And I always go to see them, the remakes, because I'm like, well, maybe this will be okay, you know, like I get suckered in because I'm just like, oh, it's like something I loved, so maybe it'll be tolerable. So it usually like is always a letdown and is never memorable and never needed to be done. So the original Halloween, I mean, that was, I can't remember if it was like in the 60s or the 70s, this movie when it came out. But it's famous for being like a largely bloodless movie, and I think takes place in Illinois, I think, Haddonfield, Illinois. So it also takes, obviously it's Halloween, so it takes place during the fall, so it's like, you know, kind of like, I really like some of the scenes on the streets with the way that fall looks on camera. I love older horror movies like that because it's more about the suspense and like the artistry of it, like camera angles and lighting and things and mood versus gore. I can't stand it. Like, we went, I think, when Rob Zombie started doing the Halloween movies, like redoing them, I think Dana and I did go to the movie theater to see one of them, and it's just gratuitous like violence, and I'm not into it. I think right around the early 2000s or mid 2000s was when they really started like upping the gore, like with Hostel and Saw. I saw the first 2 installments of Hostel. I was thoroughly disturbed by the first one. And then I don't even know why I went to go see the second one. I guess I went to go see the second one because I'd seen the first one and felt like I had to see it. And then Saw, I bought the movie. And I only ever saw the first one because I just was like, okay, I can't hang with this. And then I saw the remake of The Hills Have Eyes, which was a Wes Craven movie, and that's another thing that I just like couldn't get on board with. So I was like, okay, horror movies these days like sucks. They suck, and I don't think that they've gotten any better. So basically, I just really wish that people would stop remaking things because it's never going to be as good, and you might make money off of it, but the reception that you get is not gonna like get you more money. Like, they remade Nightmare on Elm Street and replaced Freddy, and it was a huge disappointment, and that was 9, almost 10 years ago, and I think that they wanted to reboot the series, but it just sucked so bad that they couldn't, that they were just one and done with the remake. I really just wish that people would come up with some original ideas and quit remaking things. There are so many other stories, I'm sure, that can be told that are just as good or inspired by. You don't have to keep redoing things to death. It's just a disappointment every time. Halloween, really the only Halloween movie we're seeing is the original. All the sequels are kind of crap, and then when they redid them, like last year, the most recent Halloween came out, and I think Danny McBride directed it, and that was kind of the draw for Danny. Otherwise, he never would have wanted to go. I went just because there's this really great movie theater called the Cinerama, not too far from where we live. That's kind of like an old-fashioned, but like renovated, redone. It's like a new old movie theater that they only show one movie at a time. They've got chocolate popcorn. That doesn't sound appetizing, but it does smell really good, and it like permeates the theater. And then in the theater, they've got these like on the ceiling, it's like twinkle lights. Really, really cool theater. So I was just in the mood to go. I didn't have high hopes for it, and really, I came away from that movie thinking it didn't need to be made. And I'm hearing that they're coming out with another one. I'm just like, the best thing about that movie was like the little kid, that the one Laurie Strode's granddaughter babysat. Was it the granddaughter babysat? No, I think it was like the friend of her granddaughter babysat. Anyway, he was kind of funny, but he was like the best thing about it. All the other actors were just forgettable. It just didn't need to be made. Like, it didn't add to anything, but people wanted to go see it, so it made a bunch of money. And I think it was like predominantly female, aside from Michael Myers, of course, and then like a few supporting actors. Was predominantly female horror movie, so I think it like was a big deal because of that. But at this point, like, Laurie Strode and Michael Myers are like, what? How old are they? I don't fucking know. And you know, I'm not trying to like hate on older people and say that they can't do things and they can't be in a horror movie and they can't be in movies, but come on, can they retire already? Like, they just need to retire already. Enough is enough. So, yeah, I mean, Halloween, I can kind of take it or leave it, but like the original is so iconic that I do have an appreciation for it. And then at number 7, I have the Friday the 13th film series, the 1980s films. And they feel like they're from like the 70s, like, and actually the first one could have probably been made in the 70s. I think it came out right around 80 or 81. My mom even told me that she went to the theater to go see it when it came out. And it's so funny, seeing pictures of my mom when she was that age. She reminds me of like a lot of the leading women in these movies, like just that look, that style. And my favorite Friday the 13th film growing up was Jason Takes Manhattan, which I think is like one of the least liked and actually has been probably voted the worst Friday the 13th film. As a kid, it was my favorite. I also like number 3 a lot. And then of course the original, the second was not bad. Really, the final chapter I liked a lot. After the final chapter, and then like New Blood, and they start going on like a crazy paranormal, like psychic tangent. But yeah, I mean, I have an appreciation for most of them, but I think overall, like the third movie is kind of close to a favorite, but just, I guess if I look at what's consistently been my favorite and what was my favorite when I was a kid, Jason Takes Manhattan is my ultimate favorite Jason movie. It can get kind of old. I mean, they do follow a formula, but at this point, like, I just really like the old-fashioned horror movie look of it. And that's what I like a lot about these older movies, is just the look of them. Like, there's a style that they don't capture anymore and only exists in these movies. And there's just something really comforting about going back and watching these movies, because to me, I don't even know if they were really scary to me when I was a kid. They're not scary to me now, because I've spent like 25 plus years watching them. But there's a comfort in watching them just because I've watched them for so long, and they're just so, have a certain style that I appreciate and I've grown to love and like I miss, that I just watch them over and over and over and over, and they really never get old. And I think they've had like about 1 million guys play Jason. over the years, which is different from like Nightmare on Elm Street, where people just refuse to think of Freddy Krueger being anybody other than Robert Englund, because he just like added so much to that character and made it his own and made it so iconic that nobody else can really redo it. So with Friday the 13th and like with Michael Myers, I don't even know if the same guy, well, I'm sure like any of these masked killers, I'm sure they've had different men portray them in the past, because they're silent, they just move, they're just kind of like a zombie or like Frankenstein kind of thing. And so in that, like, there's not as much imagination. It's pretty straightforward, like slasher, like kind of formulaic, and that can get kind of boring. So, but they are what they are, and they're iconic at this point, so you kind of have to appreciate them for that. And then, so that was number 7. So we've gone through 10, which was House series, 9, Hocus Pocus, 8, the original Halloween, and then 7, where we're at now, the Friday the 13th films from the 80s. Nowhere on this list will you see remakes. So I don't know if I have to keep saying that they're the original, but I will, just in case people are kind of like skipping around in the video. So number 6 is Carrie, the original, because they have they made a sequel to it, Carrie the Rage 2, which I did watch when I was a teenager. It's crap. Because that came out like I think in the early 2000s, the Rage 2, and then they redid it with some actress that I don't care for. Like, she's just not interesting to me. So I never even saw the remakes, because I was just like, I don't even care for the actress. Like, no, it's gonna disappoint. Of course. The original, like, the opening scene is like tons of like boobs and pubes. Jesus Christ. This one, like, the mother unnerved me, and it's funny because I think I read an article with the actress that played Carrie's mother, and I think that either she wasn't informed exactly the tone of the movie, that it would actually be a horror movie, or she was under the wrong impression, or like what, but she played it the way that she did because she thought it was going to be like a horror comedy or a comedy. Like, she thought it was supposed to be funny. So that kind of makes sense, like, why her performance is just so odd and like offbeat. The movie's kind of depressing, I mean, just because like you feel for the Carrie character, because like she doesn't even have a safe and loving home environment. She gets it at school, she gets it at home. She really just wants to be a normal kid, and it just kind of like gives you like really, fuck, you know what should have been on this? Okay. I'm gonna do an honorable mention, because I just remembered a movie that I started watching, that I watched a lot when I was pregnant, and it is also a classic. Should it actually be on this list? Should it be an honorable mention? Is there anyone that I could actually bump? No, it needs to be an honorable mention, because I don't think that I like it any more than these, but I just feel like it needs to be on there somewhere, because it is pretty iconic. Okay, so yeah, so Carrie just kind of like is a little bit of a depressing movie to me, and then like the part where they actually get the pig's blood from a pig, even though I know it didn't really happen, but the way they depicted it was disturbing as fuck. Didn't care for that, but overall it's a classic. You have to watch it. I think I also got the audiobook that is narrated by Sissy Spacek. I got that on Audible, which I haven't listened to yet. And I think that Carrie was 27, like in her late 20s when she was Carrie, but the way that she looked was, I guess, exactly the way that they wanted the character to look, and they thought that she could pass as a high school student. But it's crazy how many of these movies depict 17, 18-year-olds, and they're like damn near 30. I don't know if they do it so much anymore. They did it a lot more back then, I think. And then the guy that plays Tommy, I think his name is Tommy, the guy that takes Carrie to prom, is in House 1 and 4, which are number 10 on the list. I really like that guy. Like, I think his family was in Hollywood, and he kind of just like grew up in it. But yeah, so he was in it, and then there's like a lot of like little fun facts. Like Sue, the actress that played Sue, wound up marrying Steven Spielberg and divorcing him, and then getting like a bunch of money in the divorce settlement. And it's funny because, is her name Kate Capshaw, the woman who played the lead in Indiana Jones Temple of Doom, which is another Steven Spielberg movie that he later married after marrying this woman, which I can't think of her name right now, the one from Carrie. They look alarmingly alike. Like basically one has brown hair and one has blonde hair. Like he obviously has a type. It's a really good like classic movie overall. Like same thing, what I was saying before, like just the look of it, the vintage look of it, the lighting, the camera angles, the music throughout. Just, I'm a sucker for like an old, well done horror movie. Like if they could bring back some of that, like they could recapture some magic and come up with some new stories and quit having to make everything so gory and like CGI, and like just go back to like the artistry of making a movie, not just like these bullshit blockbusters that have no substance but people will just like go to see in droves and will never stand the test of time. So number 5 is one that I've been watching a lot lately. It is 1986 Critters. 86, like I said, is the year that I was born. So I watched this years after it had come out, obviously. But those little animals are my spirit animals. I love how they're just like foul-mouthed, like little balls of needles that just want to eat. I really like all the actors in this movie. My favorite is the guy who he plays one of the bounty hunters, and he plays the rock star Johnny Steele, which as a kid I didn't know that he wasn't actually like a singer or rock star or whatever. It was completely made up for the universe of the movie. And so like as the bounty hunters are trying to find their faces, because like they go from planet to planet hunting these critters and like probably other alien outlaws, and so when they're in their little space shuttle heading towards Earth, they get this crash course and like fast forward videos about Earth and what the culture is like and everything. And so it's like goes through history, and it stops on like a current music video, Johnny Steele playing the song called Power of the Night. And I loved that song when I was a kid, and come to find out, I read this like something somewhere on the internet that people actually went to the record stores trying to find that song as if it existed, but like they weren't really a band, it was just for the movie. But it was that good. It's like so 80s, but just like, and it's so nostalgic for me because I grew up watching the movie and then listening to that music, and I like loved the music. But like as the rock star, he's so convincing. And then I looked at the actor, and you could just look up the Wikipedia, and then when I do a video on it, like I'll go more into the details and have like the actors' names and everything. But for the purpose of this video, like you could find the information if you wanted it. So he's really good as the rock star, but he's also so good as like the alien bounty hunter. Just like the way that like the subtleties of his character, like he's more of the one that's like in control, and so like he's had to kind of like hold back the other bounty hunter before, but he does it in such a like, just, it's very subtle comedy, and I love it. But the guy who plays bounty hunter / Johnny Steele is, I guess, a really big Broadway actor. And I'm like, well, it makes sense that he would like totally be a convincing rock star because he does Broadway, he sings, he's like all of that. So and then there's this one scene during the movie where the family is up on the front porch, they're trying to get inside. Brad, the son, like runs across the house through, like climbs up a tree through a window to unlock the door. They get him in, and the mom has a shotgun, and like the little critters, like when they talk to each other, they have this like the little subtitles, and one critter says to the other like, they have weapons, and then one's like, so what? And then you see the gun come out through the door, and it blows one of them away, and the other one that's left there is like, fuck, and then rolls away really, really fast. And like, to me, that cracks me up. And then there's a scene where one of the critters, so like the critters are destroying Brad's room, and they're just like raging, and there's like pillow feathers flying everywhere. And one of them sees this little stuffed ET doll, and he's like hitting him with his head, and then he like eventually bites his, he's like, who are you? And then he eventually like bites his head off, and I'm just like, oh my God. It's so good. And then Lynn Shay, I think is her name, is she's related to Bob Shay, who used to own New Line Cinema, which I think got sold. I don't know if he's a part of it anymore. I feel like he might not be. But Lynn Shay has been in a lot of New Line Cinema movies. And then fun fact, Critters is playing on the TV in Nightmare on Elm Street 3, in like the little area where the girl gets her head pulled through the TV by Freddy. I never noticed it. It's so funny, the longer you watch these movies, you can be watching them forever, and I feel like every now and then you come across something that you didn't notice before. That's like a little Easter egg for the people that are just diehard fans. And then Critters came out in 86. I can't remember when Nightmare on Elm Street 3 came out. It might have been around that same time or after, because Nightmare on Elm Street, the original one, came out in 84. So that was only 2 years before Critters came out. Lynn Shay plays like the little police station dispatch lady, and she's a character. And Billy Zane plays the boyfriend to April, who is sister to Brad. Just another forever favorite. I remember watching Critters 2 and 3 maybe. Yeah. So the second one, which I remember less because I watched them less, but the second one I think took place around Easter, because at the end of Critters 1, there's critter eggs left in the chicken coop, and then Critters 2 kind of resumes around Easter time. I don't know how much time has passed, but it's around Easter, and there are little Easter eggs around, and then critter eggs, and then chaos ensues. And then the third one, I think it's the third one, that has Leonardo DiCaprio in it, and it's like Critters in the city, like Critters in an apartment building. Then there's like another song in Critters that I like a lot. Like there are some of these that just have like really, really good soundtracks. So in the scene where Bradley is making his firecracker, whatever you call it, and he's seeing his sister go out to the barn with the Billy Zane character, there's a song that came on that I liked on his cassette tape. But it's weird because the artist name that I can't think of now, that I'll put in a video specifically about Critters later, I think that the singer of that song, I think it was created specifically for the movie, and then that person did double duty as like some kind of assistant on set. So, and that's one thing I learned about like New Line movies, is they always try to keep their budget low so that what they made, like, they made a bigger profit. Typically would keep like the same people around movies when they came around sequels, and then like as people's relationships and duties, I guess, with the movies grew, they would get opportunities like sometimes to direct the next movie. So it's pretty cool, like the family that they kind of had, but like also how cheap they were and how resourceful they were. Why I guess they were such a success later on. I think there's so much more to say about these movies, but I should probably move on and then talk about them more in depth when I can just do videos specifically on these movies. I think that New Line, they might have the Conjuring movies now. I feel like I went to go see one Conjuring movie and the Annabelle movie with my sister, and there's like nothing special about them, but all right, so that was number 5. And then number 4 is the Child's Play, or the Chucky franchise, the original. We did go and see the remake, and I will say, I will give the remake credit. I think that the same people that remade Child's Play. And the positive thing I'll say about it is it did feel like its own movie. It really didn't feel like a remake necessarily. The Chucky, the remake, definitely was different. The storyline was similar, but different enough. But it wasn't anything that I loved. I was entertained the whole time, which is good. And then there was one kid character that I feel like was all of us. Like every time something would happen, he'd have this crazy scream that just perfectly illustrated like the chaos. And I remember like the theater, there was barely anybody in there whenever we went to go see it. And I just laughed so hard. And people, I think, laughed at my laugh because I just have a crazy laugh. But so of the original movies, I think the second one's my favorite. That's the first one I wound up seeing. And I think that one's more, I don't know, like flashy, I guess. I don't know. So the second one was my favorite, and then probably followed by the third one because I saw those kind of like close together. And then the first one's okay, but it's the original, so you gotta give it props. But the second and the third one, and then they kind of went downhill from there. And then they started getting a little bit better with like, what was it, Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky on Netflix. It started getting better quality again. But then like after the third one though, the third like original one, they kind of started being like kind of direct to video. There was one that had Katherine Heigl in it. I can't remember what it was called. Bride of Chucky? I think that's what it's called, Bride of Chucky. I do like that one. I mean, that one came out when I was like a teenager, so that one's kind of like a guilty pleasure. But I just feel like nobody can be Chucky but Brad Dourif. Like, he has the craziest Chucky voice. Like, Chucky will always have that voice. I think Mark Hamill voiced the remake Chucky, and it wasn't amazing. Because I just feel like Robert Englund, Brad Dourif, Tim Curry, I'll get to later, are just so good and just so much the character that I can't really get on board with anything else, and nothing will ever be as good as the original. And I know that Brad Dourif's daughter was in, I think she was in Curse and Cult of Chucky, and she looks just like Brad Dourif. But she's pretty good. Chucky just had a style. Like, I love horror villains that are like sarcastic and just bring some humor to it. And that's what a lot of them wound up being, because it's like, at some point it's not scary anymore, so then you have to have another draw, and then if you make it kind of funny and a little bit scary, then people kind of appreciate it more, because at some point it just does become absurd and you just have to laugh at it. And if you could do it in a way that's entertaining to people, you keep them coming back, like kind of reinvent it a little bit and take it less seriously. And then number 3 on the list, so Child's Play was number 4, number 3 is the original It. I don't care what you do to it, how you dress it up, who you get to be Pennywise. Pennywise will always be Tim Curry. This came out on TV. I think it was like a mini series or just like a TV movie back in the early 90s. Tim Curry was Pennywise. He was the best Pennywise. He is the only Pennywise. Bill Skarsgård, I'm sorry if that's his name. I think I said his name right. Just no. And I don't know if my opinion is popular or unpopular, that I grew up with, and I will always love the original and have allegiance to the original. Also, Jonathan Brandis was in it. Jonathan Brandis was like my childhood love. And Seth Green, who I always also loved, but like not in that way, but just loved because he was always in stuff that I liked. He was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, among other things. I'm trying to think of my favorite scene. One of the ones that was the most unnerving was Georgie, when his photo in the photo album winks. Pretty much any scene with Tim Curry as Pennywise in it was amazing. John Ritter, who was like iconic. The guy who like narrates it and who's there at the beginning, I can't think of his name. Tim Reed, I think might be his name. He played Ray in Sister Sister. Love him. And there's one part during the movie where Bev is fighting back against her abusive husband, and she throws this like face cream or hand cream or whatever it is like at his head, and it hits him. That's always a scene that Danny and I laugh at together every single time. And it looks like he's leaning into it, so every time he gets hit in the head, we're like, lean into it. The first part of it is definitely better than the second part. It's a very, very long movie, and I downloaded the Audible book, and I didn't even finish it. It's so long. I still want to finish it, but there's so much unnecessary stuff in there, and that's one of the things that I had heard or read about Stephen King, is that he just writes a lot. He's very wordy and like leaves in things that maybe don't translate that well to screen or aren't necessary. So yeah, like it's a very, very long movie and probably could be half as long, but the first part's definitely the best because it has the kids, and as a kid I feel like you're more drawn to kids in movies than the adults. And so that was number 3, and then number 2 is Rosemary's Baby. So I think that this one came out in 1968. Mia Farrow, John Cassavetes. I I love the opening scene where it's like this, over New York, and then they kind of come in on like a bird's eye view of the Branford, and then it comes down. Just like the song, and I don't know if it's Mia Farrow singing it or not, but just the Rosemary's Baby theme that is in the opening of the movie as they're like panning through New York in the sky. I just love how it opens, and it looks, it's obviously a very old movie by this point, but I just feel like, again, like that style of the old movie, how it looks, how they, how they film it, the sounds, like the soundtrack, the film score, all of that. I just love the look of a vintage movie, something that's really, really well done. And this one, I feel like, does a really good job at making you feel like, okay, is Rosemary's character crazy? Or are these people, have they really recruited her husband to have a devil baby? And then at the very end, when you find out, like, what is reality, it is also a very long movie, but I think that it, like, does hold your attention. A forever classic. It can be kind of infuriating because I feel like Rosemary is a very childlike character, and she's a woman that doesn't have a lot going on for herself. She lives for her husband, and there's multiple points in the movie where they're like, what does your husband do? And she like has this like speech, this like, she has it rehearsed like down, like she just knows. She's like, oh, he's been in, Luther, Nobody Loves an Albatross, and a lot of plays and television and commercials. And it's just like, she says it the same way every time. It's very rehearsed, and she doesn't have anything to say about herself. She has nothing going on for herself. Her husband is the center of everything. She lives for him. He's the only one that has things going on for her. She hangs out of the house, basically. And the way that she lets them kind of like hijack her pregnancy and just kind of like does what she's told. Every now and then, like throughout the movie, like back and forth, she'll be like, I don't like this. I don't feel right. She starts kind of like having periods of lucidity and attempts to fight for herself, but she always gets overpowered, and like that can be very, very, very infuriating. Ultimately, I view these classic movies as works of art, basically, because they kind of are works of art. They're a lost art. They don't make them like this anymore. So that was 2. I think they even remade Rosemary's Baby. It might have been a TV movie with Zoe Saldana in it, Saldana, at some point. I didn't watch it, didn't care to watch it because it didn't look interesting to me. I'm like, I've already seen the movie, and it didn't look interesting. So then we've come to number 1. Is it any wonder what I chose for number 1? So number 1 is the Nightmare on Elm Street film series. My favorite is number 4, The Dream Master. That was my favorite growing up. Really, it's kind of tied with The Dream Child. So Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and 5 are my favorites, but 4 edges out 5. It's the one that I loved the most when I was a kid. I should do a movie rating the Nightmare on Elm Street movies in order of my favorites, because I like them all. I don't dislike any of them, but I definitely have my favorites. So, and even like I watched Nightmare on Elm Street 2 even more since I'm an adult now. What's cool about them is a different person directed them every time, basically. So every Nightmare on Elm Street movie has a very distinct style. I think that they try to build on the lore and like really build up like the mythology of Freddy, but it is kind of cool how they do kind of stand alone and they do have their own look, because Wes Craven only wanted there to be one movie, and Danny actually likes the first Nightmare on Elm Street. He says it's actually scary, and he would never seek it out, but he can appreciate it for what it is. The rest of them he didn't care for. I'm not into classic horror, and honestly, if I had seen these movies as an adult and not as a child, who knows if I would actually like them or not. But so Nightmare on Elm Street 2, they didn't use at all the classic like da na 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 na. They didn't use that at all. they kind of had their own sounds and their own film score, which I actually liked. I didn't even notice. It's funny because I had read something that mentioned that they didn't use it at all, and I was like, you know what? They didn't, I guess. Like, I'm noticing that. I liked the film score in the second one, and I liked that the leading character was a guy. It wasn't like the final female or whatever. And that one is really, really interesting. The guy that played Jesse is now shopping around, or not shopping around, it's made. He's like going around all these festivals. He made, I think it's called Scream Queen documentary, where he talks about his experience. Basically, that movie broke him. He kind of got blamed for making it a gay movie because he is a gay actor in real life. And he quit Hollywood after that because he had such a hard time being a gay actor in Hollywood. And so there's like all this almost, I don't know if the word's mythology, but like hype or lore built around the second Freddy movie, whether or not like the gay subtext was intentional, or was it really just him kind of projecting being a gay man. I don't know. But I think it came out way later on that like the subtext was meant to be there and that he wasn't to blame for it. The third one I think is largely the fan favorite. I like the third one, but again, it's not my favorite. Fourth one was like called the MTV Freddy movie because there's a lot of really good music in it, like Dramarama, Anything. Love it. And then Tuesday Night, who played Kristen, because Patricia Arquette didn't come back to play Kristen. She actually is a singer and songwriter, and she wrote and sang the intro song. I don't remember what it's called, but it's like Running from My Nightmare or whatever. I love that one so much that like I listen to it as a song. It's that good to me. And that's the one I've been watching a lot. I've been really alternating between like all the Freddy movies, like at night when I'm up with my kid, because she doesn't sleep on her back. She sleeps on her stomach, and if she's not on her stomach, she cries and won't sleep, which means we don't sleep and we just listen to screaming all the time. So someone has to always be up with her. So I take the night shift, obviously. I'm not working right now, and I won't be for the foreseeable future. So I sleep from 12 to midnight, basically. On the weekends, I can sleep till 1 because Danny doesn't have to go to work. But I've been kind of like circulating through the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, all of them except for what was the seventh one, like A New Nightmare, which I don't even dislike, but it's probably my least favorite, so I haven't even bought it to stream. Mainly I go back between the 4 and 5, obviously, because they're my favorites. Alice is my favorite of the leading ladies of the Freddy movies. A lot of people might say Nancy because she's the original, but I love the Alice character. So many favorite scenes from the fourth one though. Like I love when she's in the movie theater and gets sucked in. I love in the beginning where Kristen gets bit by the dog and she's like wrapping up her arm, and then she drives over to Alice and Rick's house. I love the kind of like scene where Alice is like got all of her dead friend's powers, and she's like getting dressed and like getting ready for the final showdown with Freddy. As a kid, like I loved everything she was wearing and I wanted that whole outfit. And then of course I like the end scene where she finally fights Freddy, because there's a lot of gothic themes to it, like a lot of like dilapidated churches. And then the fifth one, I really love like the blue hue to it. And it's funny because I took a cinema appreciation class when I was in college, and they talk about how they do use lighting and sound and everything to affect the mood. And I can definitely see that in that movie, because I remember growing up watching it and I knew it looked blue, but come to find out I read an article with the director said that they did use a blue lens over it to give it like that blue color. And then this one is even more gothic, like in the themes, and dark than the fourth one. And the thing that people say about it is like it's too, the topics are too hard hitting for a horror film, and I'm just like, I resent that, because I love to have a little bit of substance, and like even to a horror film, like I just want a good story. So I really appreciated like the themes of abortion and like premarital sex, like teenage pregnancies and eating disorders and alcoholism, you know, single parent kind of thing. I liked it a lot. And the kid that plays Jacob is so spooky looking and like haunted looking. And come to find out, I think in the Never Sleep Again documentary, the guy who played Jacob talks about how his dad died while he was filming it, and he used a lot of that like rawness to his character for how like sad and like just forlorn his character is. And I really love what's his name? I have like the worst, like I know his name, I've seen this movie a million times. The guy who's like the little comic book artist dude, I love his death scene with Super Freddy and how he dies by Freddy like clawing at his paper cutout of his character. And when he dies, like all the color kind of like drains from him and he becomes just like a black and white like piece of paper. That one was really, really cool and imaginative. Dan's death scene, I think, is a pretty popular death scene. People really like that one, where he kind of just like becomes a part of the motorcycle and like falls away. And then at the end, of course, like with the showdown scene of that movie, like just the setup that they have, like the very dreamlike or nightmarish setup that they have with like all the steps going and it's like upside down. It's just like really, really cool. I just love the overall like gothic vibes of that movie. I really appreciate how dark it is. And then Freddy's Dead is just fun. Like I also really, really like Maggie, who plays Freddy's daughter. I read something, so she's Lisa Zane. It's so funny, like in the New Line universe, because Billy Zane, who's her brother, and arguably one of the like more famous than she is, was in Critters, which is a New Line film, and she plays Freddy's daughter in Freddy's Dead, which is a New Line film. And I'd read someone describe her performance as like cat-like, and she's very like graceful. And I do like the style that she brought to her character. And then just like the opening, like how kind of cartoony it is. It did become kind of cartoonish. It was like Freddy's Dead kind of thing. And I actually like the way that they ended it. I think Rachel Talalay, who had been involved in I think all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies up until that point, going with the tradition that New Line has of like trying to keep their costs low and give opportunities to their people. She directed the movie. I don't think she wrote it. I think someone else wrote it. And funny enough, the guy who made Lord of the Rings had submitted a script for Freddy's Dead and it didn't get chosen. And I think at one point they like talked about bringing the Alice character back with Jacob, you know, older, but then they settled on this treatment. But I love how it like opens up. I love the song that opens up the movie, and I love how a lot of these movies, this one, the fourth one, and the third one open up with quotes. And there's one, I think it's this one, Friedrich Nietzsche quote, and I can't remember exactly how it is, but it's something about like the ground gives way beneath you and the dream begins. Like I want to get that on a like LED neon board to go above my bed. But the song that kind of starts out with that quote I love, and then it kind of shifts to like the quote, they quote Freddy, "Welcome to Primetime, bitch," and then the music kind of changes a little bit. But I like how it starts, and then the opening is just really, really, really good. And then of course Roseanne is in this, a little kind of like a cameo. And then I really love when like the stoner character kind of gets sucked in the TV and Freddy plays that Inagata Vida, whatever. What is that song? It's very psychedelic. It's the first time I ever heard it was when I was a kid and saw that movie. And I was watching an Unsolved Mysteries episode actually, and like one of the band members like went missing and just went off the deep end. I think he was also like really, really smart and into math too. and he just like had gone missing or something, and so there was an Unsolved Mysteries episode about that. But yeah, like I love his little Bugs Bunny, like he's like pushing the little pincushion thing that eventually the John Doe character falls on. He's like Bugs Bunny style, like pushing it and like looking at the camera. I do like how it kind of like expands on the Freddy character and shows a little bit more backstory about him being an orphan and everything, and going inside his brain with the 3D glasses. Nightmare on Elm Street will always be my favorite horror movie franchise. Oh, my honorable mention. So we'll go back and recap in case I didn't say it right or didn't like give numbers. So number 10 was the House series. Number 9, Hocus Pocus. 10, the original Halloween. 7, the 1980s Friday the 13th film series. 6, Carrie, the original. Number 5 is the original Critters, because apparently they redid it for 2019. I don't know if it already came out or if it's going to come out. 4, the original Child's Play series. 3, the original It. 2, the original Rosemary's Baby. And number 1, the original Nightmare on Elm Street film series. So the honorable mention is When a Stranger Calls. They actually have this on YouTube, and that's where the famous line, "The call's coming from inside the house," came from. And the scariest part of the movie is the first 20 minutes. It's just so good. It's so good and so iconic. And the guy who played the villain was actually, I think, terminally ill. I don't know if it's officially said what he had. I think he had AIDS. Or was undisclosed. People speculate that he had AIDS. But he was terminally ill, I believe, when he made this movie, and he died when it premiered, like before or as it was premiering. Just another one of those classic, like, original horror movies that they don't make anymore, that they'll remake to death. Because, oh yeah, I should say, yes, the original When a Stranger Calls, not the 2006 bullshit remake that I saw when I was like 20 years old in 2006, and I did, I think, see it on video when it came out. But you can't touch the original, I'm sorry. Love the whole vintage look of it at this point, and I feel like it's held up, and it's still just like such an iconic movie. People may have forgot about it, but I think that it's still gonna go down as one of those classics though. And it's another one that kind of like has an interesting, what's interesting about it is like the most interesting and engaging part takes place in the first 20 minutes of a movie. And it's like a regular length movie. And it's kind of like, I think kind of Wes Craven derived his style from that a little bit, where like in Scream, you know, you have the twist where you think this is like the lead character and they're gonna make it through the end, and he kills him off at first. Like he makes like the big climax like the very beginning of the movie when you're not expecting it. So that had to be an honorable mention. I watched that a lot because, like I said, it's on YouTube, and I watched that quite a bit when I was pregnant. So that's it. I love Halloween. I love fall. Fall is my favorite season of the year. Halloween's probably my favorite, even though I love Christmas. But Halloween really just like kicks off the holiday season, and it's cozy and it's candy, and I bought these Halloween pajamas for me, and I bought a Halloween onesie for Vivi. Mine is just like yellow with a bunch of bats with the shirt and the pants. I have it in a vlog, I think. And then Vivi's, I bought a Snoopy and the Great Pumpkin onesie because I had to. They came from a place called Hannah Anderson online. But it's 5:40 and I'm closing in on my 6 p.m. bedtime, so I can get up with the kid and make sure she doesn't smother herself. I'm sure everybody's already seen these movies before, and if not, you must see them. They're classics. And I've been thinking about there's like more I could put on there, like Children of the Corn and The Omen and The Shining. So I'll probably do more lists in the future. These were kind of the ones that, like, if I go and look on what I've downloaded in my Amazon movie library, these are all there, and these are the ones I've been watching most currently. So, but there are so many that I could mention. There are still some classics that I need to talk about, but I want to do a video on each and every one of these and like get into the details and the little known stuff and things that people who are also enthusiastic about these movies, this style of movies, these eras of particular eras of movies, horror movies, would appreciate. Because I'm always scouring the internet, podcasts, YouTube videos, communities of people that love this kind of stuff, because nobody in my life really cares for it. I, for whatever reason, have just latched onto this stuff and have always loved it. So it's really cool to talk about it and then hopefully find other people that love it too. So I'm actually really sad. October's halfway over. I feel like the anticipation is the best part of it, and then like when it gets here, it's like disappointing because it's over. So, but I hope people that like these movies will find this video and like we can kind of like engage and talk about what we like and maybe like impart some, you know, tidbits that maybe the other didn't know. Because I'm always open to like finding out more. I want to go to these horror conventions. I've never been to a horror convention. I want to meet Robert Englund and Lisa Wilcox and all the others, and get pictures and everything before these people stop touring and doing this stuff. If you like these videos, comment, like, subscribe. I want to do more of these kinds of things. And really I just want to find like-minded people on the internet, make some internet friends, and talk about classic horror, because I would love to find people that I can engage with that love it too.